Hi, Roy here on my channel Roy Reads Anything. Anything including that titanic tome of modernism, Ulysses by James Joyce. And having finished it, I've really got a question to ponder, which is it actually a novel? And the answer really is obviously, yes it is. So, back soon with something else. But not really. Yes, it's a novel, but I think there might be some other ways to think about it that might be fun. So, I have literally been there and got the t-shirt. So I read it as part of a read-along event organised by Alan, Big Hard Books and Classics, living up to his name, and Greg, another bibliophile reads. And as well as myself, there's Will Chambers, Pat from Book Chat with Pat, and Debs from Rayner Reads Stuff. And we had some live chats about it, and it was great sort of being as part of a group endeavour. And I think we'd all agree it was a lot easier to stick with quite a challenging book, knowing that others were doing the same thing at the same time. So it is famously, people say difficult, I would sort of say not straightforward. Lots happens in here, and lots of things that you would expect to happen in a novel kind of don't. So it can be about big mythical stuff, it can be about banal everyday things, it can be dirty, it can be beautiful, it can be off the scale in terms of erudite links and allusions. And it's full of symbols and motifs that recur and pop up in unexpected ways. It can swap and change modes between different sections, so suddenly you get like a play or something that's written in sort of question and answer form. Lots going on, and lots of sort of stuff that's kind of destabilising. So what to make of it? So I've read that Brendan Behan said that one way to think of it is as a kind of joke book. And I think that sort of makes sense a bit, as it certainly has some funny parts. But I think perhaps one of the funniest jokes is that apparently Joyce himself thought it could be read by loads of ordinary readers. He basically thought this is a book for everyone. And clearly there he was kind of way off beam, because most people find it very difficult to approach. So ways to think about it that I've kind of been cogitating on. One thing is this is the thing about can you understand it? Is it easy to understand? Do you need to sort of go down loads of academic rabbit holes, or have like a stack of extra guidebooks to understand it? And I totally agree that it's useful to have somewhere to stand, within a narrative, to sort of get some sort of sense of what's going on. But must things be understood? For example, I've probably listened to have listened to every single Bob Dylan album, and there's a lot of words in all those songs. Amount of those I would claim to understand, hardly any, possibly even none. Nevertheless, I don't think the lyrics are meaningless. In fact, I think they're meaningful, but I can't decode them and say, oh, that's what Bob Dylan meant, or even that's what everyone would think based on the words we're listening to. And there's a lot of other artists, Mark E. Smith of The Fall, for instance. Lyrics, great. Understandable? No. Can't ask them, even the people who are still alive. Ask them what they mean, and they won't really tell you. So yeah, maybe understanding's overrated. Now, you might be saying, well, those are music, so you've got music as well. You know, the emotional resonance comes not just from a bunch of words, which I would agree. And there's a kind of musicality to Ulysses, not counting all the hundreds of songs that get mentioned in here, but just the way it works. So you could sort of see it perhaps as a massive prose poem. And certainly some people's approach to reading it is just read it, straight, no chaser, let it flow, absorb the language. If stuff resonates with you, using the word resonates again, then that's fine. Otherwise, just press on. It's also a very varied book. Like I said, different sections do different things. You never know quite who's the narrator. They're possibly even the author seems to have different sort of approaches, as well as all these different styles and types of things that are happening. You know, so you're not getting plot and kind of this happened, then this happened, then this happened in quite the usual way. I sort of thought at one point it's a bit like going to a museum or an art gallery. So imagine this, a big museum, 18 different rooms full of exhibits, and each room is different, and the artworks in them, some you like, some you won't, some you'll think are beautiful and engaging and want to linger, others might just feel annoying or sort of baffling or whatever, and there's all sorts of different things going on. Some of it looks like it's hundreds of years old, some of it seems like incredibly modern. And bizarrely, all of this comes from one artist. So there's that sort of hidden presence of the one artist. And stretching the metaphor a bit, the room guards in each of the rooms, they're not what you expect either. They keep coming up to you and singing songs and telling dirty jokes. So you can sort of experience it in that way, perhaps as something big and spacious. And my other thought, and again, I've done, you know, I don't pretend any sort of academic understanding of Joyce or Ulysses, but yeah, things you could expect from a novel, things that would make you say, yeah, it's just a novel. Normally you'd have a hero or protagonists or, you know, characters. And you do in this. There are particularly two main characters throughout most of it, and also really a third as well, who gets to appear centre stage in the very last section. So there are those characters, but they're not sort of being revealed so much through plot and events. It's famously confined to one day of action, and you know, you could say not much happens. But in this, as well as the characters, another hero of the book is, I would say, language itself. Okay, so the words and the way it's structured and all of that, they have more, they're doing more, they've got more of the action is around that as well as the fictional characters you're reading about. So that's something that's a little bit different. Another thing you would expect to get in a novel is a story. There's the book with a story in it, and again that is true here. But I think with this, the experience of reading it is as important as what's on the pages. Kind of hard to explain what I mean there, but you need to be a more active reader. Again, thinking of my wandering around an art gallery, being variously intrigued, baffled, annoyed, captivated, perhaps going back and thinking, oh wow, that was great after all. All of that, it's part of the experience, so it isn't just the story. And the third thing I think you get in a regular old novel is quite a private act of reading. You know, you read it beginning to end, you finished it. You have some thoughts about it, some reactions to it, which maybe you keep to yourself, maybe you share in some way. I think with this, yes, that happens, but reading and finishing it, that's kind of just the beginning, because it's almost like that's the induction into starting to be a reader of Ulysses. You know, you're sort of a part of this community of other readers which you might engage with in some way by reading books or by talking to people, and you know, there's a lot of rereaders, so it's a bit like hey, it's a hobby for life, which might sound like a living nightmare, but there it is. That's what I think. Finishing it is just the beginning. So there's some stuff that I thought about it. The other thing is ways to read it, and we did discuss this in one of the Ulysses 6 chats. Do you read it on its own? Do you read other stuff alongside? I read other stuff alongside. One thing I read was Colin McCabe's James Joyce, A Very Short Introduction. One of the very short introduction series, which I really like. So although this is about all of Joyce and all of his books, there's enough in here, in a very concise way, to just give you that little bit of a like, oh, I see, that's what's going on here, roughly. Okay, let's get through this chapter. It's also useful to know, like, look, hardly anybody likes this bit, for instance, because you know is it just me? Why does this seem, you know, there's a chapter that's written in a deliberately boring and cliche-ridden style, for instance, you know, so to know that's what's going on is kind of useful. So yeah, this Colin McCabe book I really liked. I think my Ulysses 6 pals, those who used it, did like this Patrick Hastings book, The Guide to James Joyce's Ulysses, which is very recent. It's like having a friend giving you obviously someone who knows the book, giving you some guidance to get through it and sort of supporting you along the way. Clearly he's a very, very learned guy, but it's not a super dense scholarly book. But there's some great further reading links as well if you want to pursue something better. You know, if you want to download an article about the symbolism of hats in Ulysses, there it is. And as recommended by this book, I also got this book, Ulysses Annotated, Gifford, Don Gifford, where you get a vast number of explanations of words, references, etc., and some other stuff like maps. So you know, I really like this. Again, I didn't feel I needed to read this cover to cover. It's more for me building the picture. I think this idea of building and assembling as well, that's something Alan said in one of the chats, that sort of section by section you're building a view of a character, so it's almost like layers are being added. Bit different again to your sort of standard novel where character goes from A to B on a kind of journey and things happen and they sort of you know, grow and progress. So yes, I did find this useful, and again it's you know, part of the endless depths. I read other stuff too, but those are sort of the main ones. To make, and again, this is like, yes, it's a hobby. Is it a book? To make things like this work, getting an edition of Ulysses that has the line numbers is useful. So you see these little numbers down the side. That's like a sort of code that people use, so you can say, ah, yes, you know, here we are in section 17, line 1070. The mystery of, or you know, there's all sorts of cool stuff going on. It's bottomless. It isn't solvable. Some things you can pretty much understand. You know, there's a lot in here. There's stuff about Irish history and politics. There's stuff about the sort of stuff about religion and perhaps sort of the way characters at the beginning of the 20th century are moving away from traditional religion, and yet there's still spirituality and the sublime. You know, lots going on, lots to dig into. And there's some stuff we'll never know, like who was that guy at the funeral in the Macintosh? Should there or should there not be a full stop at the end of section 17? I'll leave you with that. I like it. I'll read it again. I'll proudly wear my t-shirt. Okay, see you soon with something else.